far too long. The English based on Malta have interrupted our flow of supplies to North Africa. You have been selected to lead an elite assault force and subdue this enemy stronghold. You must secure all the island's harbors and airfields so that our hold on the Mediterranean is secure.
Hello and welcome back, YouTube Generals, to Panzer General 2. This is the Adlerkorps edition. We're playing on minus 50% prestige. This is our prototype unit from the last Africa Corps mission. We're going to go ahead and reassign it. We don't need that artillery unit, so we'll get the money for it. We're going to over-strengthen our bombers for this mission because this mission in particular, the bombers are pretty important. They have a lot of shipping that will need to be destroyed, and we could also use another bomber in order to complete that mission. So we're going to pick up another Italian bomber, which we just did, and go ahead and deploy here. Originally I'd pulled the sound off of this because I didn't realize I was listening to Kriparian on his Hearthstone live stream, so it kind of like blended together, so I apologize for that. No sound effects, however, you'll have me doing the narration here. So for this particular level, it's pretty short, and it's a lot like the last two that we did. There's only like, I don't know, 6 to 8 turns, and you have to go the full stretch of the island and get to the very end in order to get a brilliant victory. And it's not easy because they have a ton of ships up in the northern part of this island, and there is heavy cruisers, battleships, carriers, destroyers. I mean, you name it, they have it. So it's really important to destroy their aircraft, which I believe they only have 2 in this mission, which is very lucky for us because it'd be impossible if they had more. And get over there and start bombing the shit out of them immediately, because the weaker that you make them before you get there, the better off you'll be, obviously. So by the time you get to the top, you'll have already basically either destroyed, if you're lucky, or wounded those guys so where they won't harm your your paratroopers as badly, as well as your guys moving up, because they can destroy artillery units very easy with these larger ships. So I like to use the ships to suppress these guys. Usually I don't get a ton of kills unless it's battleships, but the destroyers do put the hurt on them in terms of suppression, so it does work pretty good there. See, I'm trying to take out this anti-aircraft unit here. Okay, move on up. You want the main bulk of your force to go straight up as fast as possible. Oh, that's bullshit. Friggin' artillery right there, what the hell? That's crap. Usually, I think they do usually have artillery there, so just, I don't remember them having artillery there. Like I said, we are preparing for that turn with the 2 aircraft that'll come in. I forget if it's 2 Spitfires or 1 Spitfire and a Hurricane. Either way, they're decent aircraft, and I believe they are over-strengthened, so you do want some anti-aircraft to help protect you, especially if you're playing this game on lower prestige. I think that having the 88mm flat guns is pretty damn important, because without those, you probably would have to reinforce or maybe even lose potentially some of your guys, and that's just something you can't do, especially when they're going to bomb your artillery, you know, the important stuff, right? So this is a fairly easy mission. It's not particularly difficult. I think I had to play it twice. I was 1 turn off the first time, and I was perfectly where I should be on this one. And the mission after this is actually Russia, so it's good to not use any of your prestige here. That way you can kind of hoard up a bit, get some of your units over strengthened, or buy you another anti-aircraft, or maybe even a fighter or something like that to help you along. Russia is where you're going to get the bulk of your experience for your main troops, so your aircraft especially, because the Russians have so much equipment. When you take out their aircraft, you'll be able to bomb just about every turn. In fact, you should be able to bomb every turn, and the bombers are not nearly as important later on as the fighters are. Because later in England and in the United States, you're going to end up fighting a lot of anti-aircraft situations, and you're not going to be able to use those bombers. But the fighters will help you fight off their fighters, which are usually better than yours. So it's pretty damn important that you have those. Okay, we're just deploying out our bombers here. We're going to start heading over to the west right away, because we want to get over there, but we also don't want to be vulnerable to fighter attack. They probably are vulnerable over there, although I've never been attacked by fighters over there. They're too busy trying to attack my my artillery and things of that nature, softer targets. I suppose if they were in a bad spot they would get hit, but there's so much anti-aircraft when you first start Malta that it's kind of unlikely you're going to be bombing anyway. You really don't need it. With all the ships that you have, you don't really need any bombing runs, to be honest. I mean, it's handy when you get to the top and everything's taken out, but by that time it's like, whatever. Okay. Just looking at how much prestige we have. Not bad for just starting. I think it was like around 300 or so. So when you get to the top portion of the island, that's when the destroyers will start to attack you. Here's their aircraft we're going to defend against here. Interceptors and anti-aircraft shooting. And there should be one more. Here he comes. And we'll hit him as well. No damage, it's good. Got a little lucky there. So we should be able to take these guys out fairly easily now. These two aircraft. And that's literally all we'll have to deal with. So we had 6 fighter aircraft. So, you know, 2 British, even though they are really well defended, even though they're very hard to kill. It doesn't matter, we'll take care of them anyway and get it done. So the instant that you kill these fighters, the remaining fighters, if you have any that are remaining, I'm trying to get more experience for our guys here, that's why I keep looking. But anybody that doesn't need that, or anybody that can move, should move to the north and try to help find those big ships for your bombers and start bombing right away. I realize this is only turn 2, but you don't have a lot of turns to be waiting for miracles or waiting for anything to happen. You need to be on top of that, so get out there and get on top of those ships. Of course, we're going to use the ships to damage these guys. The tank is being quite difficult to kill, considering he's only got 1 strength left. There we go. Ridiculous. The British do have some very good equipment, I will give them that. I think that even though a lot of it was outdated, and, you know, even though some of the equipment they had could have been a lot better, what they did with it was absolutely amazing. I mean, the Germans actually never captured Malta, and they never captured North Africa either. They got a chunk of it, but then they were pushed back. So, you know, the British really did defend tremendously against that assault, and it was pretty impressive they were able to do it. Of course, they owned the shipping and sea lanes, so it did make it a bit easier. If they were in the Germans' position of not being able to do that and losing a lot of your supplies to submarines and, you know, just getting caught crossing with aircraft, etc., that may have been a different story. But for whatever reason, the Germans thought that they could, I guess we shouldn't call them the Germans, the Nazis thought that they could capture North Africa with the Italians, but to this day I've always thought that was a horrible idea. I realized that capture of North Africa would have led to more oil, which they did need, obviously, but it just doesn't seem like it would have been... you couldn't hold what you were trying to get. And no matter what leaps and bounds you made, it wouldn't have made any difference because you had no way to resupply and rearm and retrofit your equipment, and then you ran out of gas, and it was just a really stupid situation. Same thing with the Battle of Britain. You know, it's a little off topic here, but bear with me. Same thing. You know, they just bombed them, and originally they were going to invade them, and they decided not to. I guess Hitler mostly decided not to. And then it was like, oh, well, screw Britain, you know, we're not focusing on them. We're going to start a war with Russia. Well, gee, I mean, you started a war with the British, which at the time were a massive colonial power. And then you started a war with the Russians, which are even more massive in terms of numbers. So, kind of crazy. So as you can see here, we did spot one. We're going to go up here and bomb the hell out of this. The British ships are way better than the Italian ships, and I don't think that that's even a stretch of the imagination. I think that was definitely true. The Italians never really used their navy, and I think there was a good reason why. I don't know that it would have made a huge difference, and they would have just lost a ton of ships, so, and lives for that matter. And the Italians, when Hitler came to see Mussolini, I've been told and I've seen on TV, on documentaries, some of the soldiers were marching with cardboard shoes because they didn't have enough equipment to do the march, so they had cardboard shoes. That's what kind of shape they were in. And more than that, I think Mussolini was scared of Hitler. I really do. I think that Hitler was moving across Europe, and Mussolini was like, wow, you know, it'd be nice to reclaim some territory, and not only that, but, you know, this guy is going to keep going, and he's not going to stop, and no one's been able to prevent him from just taking over everything that he sees. So I'm sure in his mind, you know, it wasn't a bad deal, but it ended up being a horrible deal, and Italians paid for it, unfortunately. I don't think that that was the best decision, but, you know, who knows what would have happened had they chose a different route. You know, had they decided to go the neutral route like Switzerland, or had they decided to go the we're not going to get involved with the Nazis route, the Nazis might have taken over the Italians. Who knows? I think they would have had a little bit of a difficult time doing that. I think the Italians would have been better as defenders rather than attackers, especially at that stage in the war. But it's hard to say. Just one of those interesting little things that happened and, you know, was going on at the time. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. I'm just kind of sitting here. Must have went to get a drink or something. Bear with me here, guys. There was a lot of interesting things in World War II. You know, just things that were really odd that people didn't know or realize, like the Enigma code machines being broken, or the Germans thinking that they could hold a line in Russia that was hundreds of miles long, and using Romanian and Italian and some other troops from Europe nations that were just not, they weren't bad troops and they weren't bad armies, they just weren't prepared for the onslaught that was the Russians. And, you know, even the Germans themselves weren't prepared for the counterattack. And there's many times where they could have retreated a bit and made it a lot better situation, but they never did. So, you know, Hitler basically no retreat, no surrender. Same thing with Stalin. You know, after they got to Stalingrad and Leningrad, was the last straw. So, really interesting information. I know it's not really pertaining to this video, but I always found it pretty interesting. This mission is not particularly action-packed or complicated. You know, there's not very many units. There's not a lot of tactical advantage here or anything like that. Nothing that would really... Oh, gee. That was smart. There's really nothing here that isn't obvious, you know what I mean? Like, they just have a few units stationed on Malta, and really, from what I understand, that's actually fairly accurate. I don't think the British ever thought that the Germans would invade Malta, and not only that, but they probably figured they didn't need a ton of defensive units, just simply because of the fact that how would they get there? And even if they did get there, how would they survive the attacks from the naval ships that they had in the area, which were everywhere. Malta is kind of like that midway point between Africa, Italy, and Europe, really. So it's kind of, it's one of those places that the Germans really hated because the British would use it as a jump point to get not only supplies, but they would use their aircraft there and attack German positions. And it was pretty dangerous. So, pretty interesting little island, little history there. I don't I don't know what goes on in Malta nowadays, but that would have been quite the thing back then. Okay, so as you can see, we basically defeated one half the island already, and we're just trying to stretch out as far as we can to get past these guys. You could probably do this scenario a little faster than I am, but I like to be a little cautious with those ships because those ships just really put the hurt on you, and it's not worth it to get caught by them. You will get absolutely wrecked if they find you. They will start destroying units, and if you're at 300% prestige, maybe you don't give a crap, right? You don't care. But I'm telling you, when you're at 50%, you need every unit you can get. You can't afford to lose units at all. So, at least in my opinion, I think we lost a paratrooper unit that I never replaced, and I wasn't really too happy about that. But in the Africa Corps scenario, which is a user-generated scenario, absolutely absurdly hard. But yeah, other than that, we really haven't lost much, if anything. So I think that's literally the only unit we've lost, core units wise, anyway. So still looking for those big bad ships out there, trying to find us some targets. Believe there's some destroyers over here. Yep. So the trick to the destroyers is to hit them with a fighter first before you use your destroyers on them. Because as I said, yours are not as good as theirs, so you need to suppress them a bit. And even then it's 4-3. 4 to them and 3 to you. In other words, they will kill 4 of you for every 3 of them. That's still not favorable odds, but it's a hell of a lot better. Moved our airborne paratroopers into place. They're getting torn up by the anti-aircraft. However, this is the turn that I really need them there. We're bombing their shipping. We're going to get rid of a lot of these destroyers, or at least hurt them to where they'll be disabled, or they won't want to fight the infantry on the island. Basically, they'll be distracted, and that's good enough. That's what you need to do, is put that hurt on their ships as much as possible. So we're going to land some pair of poopers. Retreat this guy because he damn near got killed. He's got 1 guy left, which is fine. He wasn't overstrengthened to begin with, so we didn't lose out on any prestige there or anything. And we got 1 up by the airport and 1 in between 2 units right below the main objective. So, and again, we're going to continue to bomb these ships. Super important to destroy as many as possible. And then we're going to move our ships in to position. And you are possibly going to lose some ships, especially destroyers. But as long as you keep some of your ships, which you're guaranteed to, they can't kill all of them, especially after you've been putting the hurt on them, you'll be able to better combat the last part of the island up here where they're pretty well dug in. And you're going to bomb the hell out of them. I'm sorry, not bomb, bombard them with all of your naval ships. So here you can see I'm attacking the destroyers. We're getting ready to attack with ours, as you can see. Some of these are not really all that favorable, some of them are. Trying to get lucky with a tank there, it didn't work. What this will do is not only will it keep them off of our infantry and our tanks, but it will give them something else to shoot at. It will get them something else to destroy that isn't a core unit. So very important, it's a very good idea to make sure that you take care of this. Okay. This port here actually holds out for a while. That one to the right there. It actually holds out for quite a while, surprisingly. Checking that town to see if anybody's in it. There isn't. As I said, they don't have a ton of units on this map. You're still... well, not really, I guess. I guess it's... You might actually outnumber the British in this particular scenario. I think you probably do. And that's unusual, because usually a lot of these scenarios, you're usually the one that's outnumbered big time. Any Russian scenario that you play, you are severely outnumbered. I don't care which one you pick one. They have a ton of stuff. But the quality of that stuff, that equipment, is not necessarily up to par with yours. Just depends on what it is. Okay, start doing our shipping bit here. Need to start getting them up to where we can shoot and really make a difference here. Keep them occupied with our ships rather than our infantry and our tanks, which are trying to, you know, move up here. We are going to take some shots inland if we can and get as much as possibly can be done. In real life, I don't think you'd sacrifice a carrier like you'll see me do here, but it is what it is, so. It's the easiest way for me to get them to shoot at the carrier and not at my guys, so basically they're just providing a distraction. Okay. Not favorable enough to do anything more on this particular turn. And they're still going to shoot at some of your troops. They're still going to shoot inland a bit. But the point is you're minimizing that by giving them not only new targets to shoot at, but also harming them in a severe way. So basically, even if they survive, they still lose the battle and they still lose the island. And that's really important. The Germans always had these weird, the Nazis I should say, always had these weird timetables that were required to be met. And so that's why this game makes sense. You know, a certain number of turns would be a certain number of days or weeks that you would need to accomplish your mission. And that's a true story. You know, you got to think too that they would have known how long it would take for the British to respond or something like that, and it would make a difference. It really would. So we got the last holdouts over here. Gonna go ahead and destroy them. Like I said, this particular scenario, there's nothing really fancy or special to it. It's very, very straightforward, just like the last two Africa missions. Pretty simple. There's nothing really like special that you should do, I suppose. I would recommend, although not necessary, that you use 3 paratrooper units, 1 non-core and 2 of your own, to attack that furthest victory hex up there. And the reason is, as you saw, was pretty simple. You know, you're probably going to get 1 unit that's either damaged or destroyed, so you're going to have to play it in a way that makes sense. You know what I mean? You need to have enough troops so that you can continue the fight. And putting 3 up there, it's unlikely they'll destroy 3. Extremely unlikely. They'd have to have some pretty serious aircraft to destroy 3 units, so they don't. They do have anti-aircraft, which is devastating, but it's not enough to prevent you from accomplishing your mission. So any experience you can get is good, especially on your fighters. They'll be the ones that need it the most. You know, you've been buying fighters slowly throughout the campaign because they're very expensive. The Adlerkorps editions were really hard because the fighters, I believe, are increased in prestige cost overall. I think they're 900 and something. Whereas the SSI version of this game, I don't remember them being that much. I want to say they were probably 400 or 500 tops. So does make it a little bit more tricky, you know, to get certain units. Not impossible though, you know, difficult, yes. And a lot of what you see me do is because I already know where a lot of this stuff is. I've played this game a lot over the years, and I know where the units are going to be. I know what type of units they're going to have most of the time. So it really gives me a certain advantage. If you were playing this at 50%, and you're trying to get brilliant victories without ever playing it, without loading or retrying, that would be very difficult. Again, not impossible, but I think that you'd have to be more cautious so you didn't lose units, and I just don't see how that would work, because, you know, you're on a time crunch. Usually a lot of these missions I'm beating by literally one turn or on the turn, the last turn for a brilliant victory. So I don't see that being an easy feat. So this will be the second to the last turn here. Actually, no, this will be the last turn. That one we just watched was the second to the last turn. So okay, pass it over here. Yep, we knew that was coming. Sure. This is why it's so important to bomb those ships ahead of time. Is basically what you just saw is the end result of all of my hard work defending those guys with our ships and our bombers. So it's a huge deal, and I don't particularly think this mission would be possible without them. Obviously it would be better if we had more bombers. It would have taken less time, and perhaps we wouldn't have gotten hurt at all. But again, you know, you're playing at 50%, so to have 3 bombers is actually pretty darn good. 3 and 6, you know, that's 9 aircraft divisions. That's pretty crazy. For 50%, that's good. Of course, I played a lot of scenarios to get those. A lot of brilliant victories were won, and some were not. Eindhoven, we didn't get a brilliant. That mission's bullshit. In my opinion, I hate that. That particular scenario has as many turns as this does, and it is way further than Malta was. So, yeah, I do not like Eindhoven. I think that it was purposely made to be damn near impossible to get a brilliant. I have gotten a brilliant on that scenario, but I'm telling you, it's like 1 out of 50 times I play this, if that. I mean, I've played it over and over and over again. Even at 300% prestige sometimes, I just have a hell of a time beating it. And that's saying something. I don't know if I'm just too slow, or if my tactics are just not very good. I don't know. Just huge pain in the butt. So as you can see, we're getting into the last parts of this mission here, or scenario. Keep saying mission, I guess same thing. And we're gonna capture that last port. And of course we got this port over here. And then this will be our last holdout. Took quite a bit to get these guys down, but eventually we did get them. And of course, you know, that's a huge bottleneck at the top in the north there, so it doesn't really help you all that much to move your troops up there. That's why those paratroopers are so important, is you literally may not have enough time to get your troops in there. So definitely a good idea to do it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.